as long as that there is a convergent trajectory, as long as we're all ending up at the same point, which is an end to factory farming, and animals treated in a better way, the environment looked after, some of the public health threats that are endemic in factory farming that we move beyond that, then all of that takes us to a better world. And you know what? There is then a normalization thing that comes in. People are much more able, I believe, to see that going back to a factory farm regime, going back to keeping animals in blatantly conditions that cause them suffering, would become unthinkable. That's where we want to get to.
You have said that the EU is the key battleground for compassion in world farming. Why?
We see the European Union as a key battleground partly because it's where we are, partly because the European Union of 27 countries is a major, if not the world's biggest, agricultural exporter and importer. And what happens in the European Union matters to other parts of the world. So we believe, whilst we've got traction in the European Union, whilst we are making changes, we need to stick at that, because reform in the European Union gives us leverage in other parts of the world. But it's not the only key battleground. Other key battlegrounds are in the United States, are in Latin America, are in Asia, particularly in China and India. These are the areas where...
Really? In India? I've been to India. I thought they love cows and they don't hurt them and they don't hurt animals. But maybe I'm wrong.
Well, there is a great culture there. You're absolutely right in India. What is happening, however, in Asia, in India and in China, is there is an upsurge in demand for meat and dairy products, and there is an upsurge in the development of factory farming. So it's going to be a key battleground, I think, going forward.
Definitely in China, I would say. And also Russia. I saw them kicking pigs in a pig farm, and it so upset me. They were so mean to these pigs. My God. They were just crying. They were being kicked in these pens. Literally, I saw this. I couldn't believe it.
It's terrible, yeah. But you know what? Some of the battle is about trying to get across to people what is acceptable and unacceptable in terms of behaviors. Let me give you an example. Going back nearly 20 years now, I went out with an investigative team. We were investigating Spanish slaughterhouses, and we went in one particular Spanish slaughterhouse where we saw a truck pull up with 6 sheep in the back. Now, those 6 sheep were then picked up by the slaughtermen. They were picked up in a way that, to me, translated to care. The animals were picked up gently, and they were carried in a way that you or I might carry a large pet dog to the vet. But they weren't going to the vet, of course. They were hung up by their back leg. Whilst they were dangling and writhing, they had their necks stabbed with a knife. I use that word deliberately. The knife went in one side and out the other. It was not a deep cut, and so the animals bled more slowly. Once the 6th animal was hung up and had its neck stabbed, one by one they were taken and they were placed on their backs on a cradle. At least 2 of the animals were still clearly conscious. One tried to get off of the cradle, and when they were put on the cradle, they had an airline, a pneumatic pump put into their legs through a hole, and they had their bodies pumped up to make skinning easier. Now, those slaughtermen weren't doing that out of malice. They weren't doing that out of wanton cruelty. They simply didn't know that they were supposed to be doing it differently. They didn't know they were breaking European Union rules because they didn't know there were any rules to break. We have a big educational job to do. We have a lot of work to do. That particular slaughterhouse was closed down, but the underlying part of this story is partly about expose, partly about education, partly about getting our society to the next level of consciousness about animals, their sentience, and how we should treat them and how we should not mistreat them.
It's amazing to me that you're able to have the poise, the centeredness, the calm in the way you articulate this. It's so deeply upsetting. I think it's really a huge testimony to you that you're able to steward this in a way where you're not on a rampage about it, and you're articulate about it, and you can shepherd this in. It's a huge thing. It's hard not to feel the connection and the despair of what animals go through, even while you're doing it. I mean, I hear the story that you just said, and it's so upsetting to me.
Thank you for that. It's not easy, but I think being able to put these things across in a way which other people can connect with and feel that that the story is genuinely meant, but is not put over in a hectoring or hysterical way. I think
Right.
these are important communications tools and ones which increasingly as a movement we need to make sure that we deploy.
Can you talk a little bit about kosher killing of animals? Because I come from a Jewish family, and it was always a belief that kosher was compassionate treatment of animals. Is it or isn't it? Tell me the truth, because I don't know. Just because a
Yeah.
rabbi's there doesn't mean everything going on is good. It's all about the paradigm. What is your factual understanding of the kosher way? Is it better? What really happens? Have you ever investigated this?
Yeah, we've looked into this a lot. And speaking frankly,
Yes.
an animal that is slaughtered, whether it be for under a religious doctrine or any other, if an animal has its throat cut whilst it's fully conscious, without pre-slaughter stunning, that is going to cause immense suffering. And cannot, in my view, be seen as humane.
When you say without going through pre-slaughter, did you say stunning?
Pre-slaughter stunning. Yeah, if we were looking to achieve humane slaughter, then what we would be looking to do is to render the animal unconscious and thereby insensitive to pain before its throat is cut, before it feels any fear or other distress.
I agree with you. Is that easy to do?
It can be done, and it is done. For cattle, for example, you would use a captive bolt pistol. Certainly, in conventional slaughter, it is a legal requirement in the European Union. There are exemptions to that legal requirement for religious purposes, and under that exemption, animals can have their throats cut whilst they're still fully conscious. And that, to me, and according to the scientific evidence, will cause pain and immense suffering.
It's interesting because, a lot of us are told things that we believe when we're growing up. So I was told that cutting an animal's throat is the most humane way of slaughter. So that's what I believed all these years. I don't know about the science of it. I didn't know that they hung them by their feet when they did that, which I think is also painful to the animal. I can't imagine if you did it to a human that it wouldn't be stressful and painful and have them suffer. But that's the translation from people living in the older paradigm, which is that they're non-sentient and it's the quickest, most humane way to kill them.
When that belief, when that practice was first adopted, it probably was the most, it probably was a huge step forward. If you think about how animals must have been treated in millennia gone by, you go back 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years, it must have been a really awful time for animals. There was no refrigeration, no way of storing. Perhaps, I don't know, but perhaps one way of keeping meat, of having meat and keeping the rest fresh, may be to cut an animal's leg off. So it may have been